Hi friends, Chapter 20, Jake Terranova. As I cruise along River Street with the top down, the red brick of Greenwich Middle School heaves into view. That place used to be a bad memory. I was never much of a student, but middle school was a really rough time. I was lucky to get away with suspension over the cheating thing. My dad hadn't belonged to the same college fraternity as a couple of the school board members. I probably would have been expelled. It was that close. Now, though, Greenwich Middle School means Emma. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Just the thought that she's somewhere inside the building puts a smile on my face. The smile disappears when I recognize the figure standing at the entrance to the driveway, glancing impatiently at his watch. Mr. Kermit, my old teacher. The man who has every reason to drink from the haterade where I am concerned. That's a funny word, the haterade. Back in 7th grade, I was so happy not to be expelled that there wasn't another thought in my head. It never crossed my mind that the episode might cause problems for my teacher. Why would it? Mr. Kermit was completely innocent. Who knew better than the guy who was completely guilty? But that's only the half of it. According to Emma, Mr. Kermit's life crashed after that. His reputation was shot, his engagement to Emma's mom fell apart, and he totally got burned out professionally. Honestly, I had no clue until Emma showed me the article about the Venezuelas. The fact that the scandal still sticks to Mr. Kermit after all these years is nuts. Not that I ever had the power to change anything. I was a middle school kid in big trouble. I followed my parents' instructions to the letter. Basically, be quiet and keep your nose clean. Now that I know the extent of it, I'd do anything to make it right. The problem is, it's too late. Sure, Mr. Kermit is letting me help with the kids of his class of Unteachables, and I'm getting along great with the kids, but as for the teacher himself, no dice. I checked the clock on my Porsche's high-tech dashboard. It's only 2 p.m. Why isn't Mr. Kermit in school? I pull alongside him and wave. Mr. Kermit scowls at me with what Mateo calls the Squidward Grinch face. That kid's pretty weird, but he's usually spot on. He's nicknamed me Han Solo because both of us are lovable scoundrels. Maybe I walked away from the cheating scandal with a slap on the wrist, but lately it's come back to haunt me in all sorts of ways. Everything okay, Mr. Kermit? I ask. My taxi is late. Right, his car is in the shop. I volunteered to fix it at no charge, but he wasn't having any of that. To say he's stubborn as a mule is an insult to mules. Hop in, I invite. I'll give you a ride wherever you need to go. No thanks, he replies formally. I've been waiting 40 minutes for this taxi. It'll be here any second. It's not coming, I persist. Did you try Uber? He looks blank. I remember that Mr. Kermit has a flip phone, and that's probably as old as his car. There are smartphones and dumb phones. His is a rock. I unlock the passenger door. Mr. Kermit, please let me give you a lift. When he reluctantly gets in and announces his destination, I nearly choke. He's going to pick up his car from Kingston's Auto Works. Are you serious? You took your car 15 miles out of town just to avoid my offer to fix it for free? The response is a heavy dose of Squidward Grinch face. I don't want to owe you anything. You wouldn't owe me anything. I'm practically whining. I would have been happy to do it. He's sarcastic. Well, so long as you're happy. That's not what I mean, and you know it. I enjoy doing favors for friends. Mr. Kermit doesn't like that, so I adjust my word choice. For people I know. You used to be my teacher. I remember. This is it, my chance to clear the air and apologize. But as soon as the thought pops into my head, I know he won't let me. Better be quiet about it. Maybe as the two of us spend more time together, I'll get another chance. Maybe the moon will fall out of the sky. When the Porsche reaches Kingston Auto Works, Mr. Kermit takes out his wallet and tries to pay me for the gas. When I won't accept it, he stuffs a $20 bill into the glove compartment and gets out, not bothering to say thank you. I get out too, and receive a generous helping of the Squidward Grinch face. I can handle it from here, he assures me. I'm going with you, I insist. I don't want you to get ripped off. These guys are all crooks. Including you? Mr. Kermit inquires innocently. I run a totally honest shop, but I still feel my cheeks flush. An old clunker like yours, the parts probably would have to come from a third world. Who knows what they'll try to charge you for them? It must make an impression because Mr. Kermit actually allows me to follow him inside. The place is a dump. You could probably catch the plague just standing here and breathing the air. The mechanic behind the counter instantly recognizes me. Hey, you're Jake Terranova. What are you doing here? My very good friend is picking up his car, I reply pointedly. I want to make sure that he gets a fair deal. We barely know each other, Mr. Kermit sets the record straight. The mechanic picks up a clipboard. Which car? The Cocoa Nerd, the teacher tells him. The what? Mr. Kermit flushes. It's a Chrysler Concorde, 1992. One of my students calls it. He's different. I snap my fingers. Parker, right? What's up with that kid? He's got a lot of mechanical ability, but ask him to read the name off a part, and it comes out pure gobbledygook. It's not gobbledygook, he says, insulted on Parker's behalf. The boy has a perception problem. He sees the letters, but his mind rearranges them. Concord to Cocoa Nerd. Like an anagram, the mechanic butts in. You should meet my boss. He's an anagram maniac. You look at a word, and to you it's just a jumble, but he can pick it out in a heartbeat. Poor Parker. The kid's got real potential, but how's he ever going to pass an engineering exam if he can't read the questions? All right, where's the car? Car's not ready, the mechanic tells us. There's a part coming from the Bahamas, and it's held up in customs. Instead of getting mad, Mr. Kermit acts like he's in a completely different world. Anagrams, he repeats slowly. He grabs my arm. Let's go. You have to stick up for yourself, I say sternly. I turn to the mechanic. Is this what you call service? If I ran my shop this way, I'd be out of business in a week. How's the part coming from the Bahamas? By manatee? It doesn't matter, Mr. Kermit insists. Take me to the bookstore. The bookstore? You don't need books, you need wheels. Back in the porch, he explains that all this is about. Parker's mind turns text into anagrams. Yeah, so? So anagrams are something you can get good at, like any other puzzle. I stare at him. Solving anagrams can teach you to read? Mr. Kermit shakes his head. Of course not. Parker needs a reading specialist. If I was half a teacher, I would have gotten him one weeks ago. I'm so confused. So where do anagrams fit in? The kid's reading has been a disaster for so long that he looks at it like it's magic, something he'll never be able to master. But solving anagrams will show him it can be done. So when I get him the help he needs, he'll believe it can work. Can you get him the help he needs? I asked. The district has reading specialists, he explains. Nobody sends them to SC8 because they consider my students a lost cause. That ends now. He glares at me. The bookstore. I step on the gas and the Porsche surges forward. It's amazing how Mr. Kermit's whole face changes when he's talking about the kids in his classes. He becomes a totally different person, younger, more alive. He's the teacher I remember from all those years ago. At the bookstore, he's a whirlwind, stacking up an armload of anagram puzzle books tall enough for him to hold in place with his chin. By this time, school is out, so he demands to be taken to Parker's house. Can't you just wait to see him in the morning? I want to strike while the iron's hot. The Elias family lives just outside of the Greenwich city limits on a small farm that was designed to keep sports cars out. The long driveway is really just a pair of ruts worn into the unpaved ground by vehicles much higher and wider than a Porsche. I can actually feel the weeds brushing the low undercarriage as we jounce along. Eventually, we come to a low wood frame home next to a shed amid tall fields of corn. No sign of life from the house. I cut the engine. Should I honk? Let's give it a while, Mr. Kermit decides. After about 15 minutes, Parker comes roaring up the drive, his famous grandmother in the passenger seat of the pickup. I know a moment of agony as the kid pulls too far close behind the parked convertible. Parker is pretty bewildered to see his teacher rushing across the front lawn, toting a pile of books he can barely see over. The grandmother spies me, standing by my car. I know you, she calls. You're Jumpin' Jake Terranova. That's right, ma'am. Pleased to meet you. She beams. I see you on television. You'll jump through hoops to provide fast relief from painful athlete's foot fungus. That's not me, I tell her. I get you a great deal on a new or used vehicle. She looks at me like I'm feeble-minded. Why would I need that? I got my grandson to drive me around. Mr. Kermit is having an animated conversation with Parker, holding up an anagram books and talking a blue streak. They're well into it when a small tractor chugs out of the field and an older, taller version of Parker hops off and joins the group. Parker's dad is surprised that a teacher would make house calls, but as Mr. Kermit explains his plan, the man looks impressed and smiles with appreciation. The contrast isn't lost on me. Mr. Elias's gratitude for a teacher who's willing to move heaven and earth to help a student versus my folks all those years ago. They rescued their son, and I'm thankful, but in the process they hung the teacher out to dry. Mr. Kermit deserved better. I hope someday I'll get the chance to make it up to him. So what do you think? How do you think Jake Terranova is going to make it up to Mr. Kermit?